Hey, it's Inspiration4U.
Hello, welcome to another edition of the PSO Inspiration4U podcast with Unit 4. My name's Bryce Wolf. I'm a Senior Manager of Industry Solutions at Unit 4, and I have the honor of welcoming Craig Schiff, who is the President and CEO of BPM Partners. Today, as we talk about the productization of professional services. Welcome, Craig.
Thanks for having me, Bryce.
Thanks for being here. Can you give us a little bit of your background, your credentials, your experience with productization of professional services and just professional services in general?
Yeah, pretty much been in professional services for a long time, a very long time. In the earliest days, I kind of worked at a division of GE, the GE Information Services Company, where I was a software developer at the time, custom products, custom solutions for our customers. That was done on a time and materials basis. GE also sold a time-sharing service at the time, so the goal was to build these products that they'll run on time-sharing, and then GE would get revenues for usage. Very old days when they used to do that stuff. Although, the cloud world is very similar. It's the same premise. Everything old is new again. But after that, I was at Hyperion Software, which is now part of Oracle, and I was the Senior Vice President of their Products and Services group, which was mostly services. And it was large, hundreds of people implementing Hyperion software. And we dabbled in some of the productization, which we'll talk about as we go through discussion today, but mostly, again, time and materials. But a lot of consulting work was done there, and as I said, we tried out some of the principles that I've applied to my current company. After Hyperion, I was at a company. I started with a group of people, ex-Hyperion people, called OutlookSoft, which was another software company that coincidentally competed with Hyperion. After our one-year non-competes expired, of course, but it did. And that had, it was a product company. There was an implementation group, which is, always my first love, which is why when I left there, about 20 years ago, I started BPM Partners, which is my current company, which is a management consulting company and advisory services company. And from day one, our services here have been productized because they needed to be, which again, as we go through our discussion, I'll zero in why for this company uniquely, it was the only way to go. But I've been in the service industry, as I've said, over 30 years at various companies, software companies, and now for the bulk of the time at management consulting firm. So I'm very experienced with delivering service, profitably for us, but also producing referenceable customers and how to balance both of those, and also work-life balance for the consultants themselves. I mean, times have changed. We used to travel all the time at Hyperion, all over the country, all over the world in many cases. And you burn out fairly quickly from that. And today, people are more reluctant to do that. So the productization provides some benefits there as well. And again, as we go through our conversation, I'll explain, how that all comes together and how this, productization is almost the holy grail of what we're looking for. Not perfect, but, almost the ideal of what we're all looking for. And for most companies, I definitely believe it's the way to go.
Okay, so you've definitely got a lot of experience ranging from large companies with Hyperion and Oracle to smaller companies, startups, and it sounds like everything in between. So well-versed in the world of professional services. So productization of professional services right now, it's relatively new, but it's not. What is it? So what is it when an organization wants to productize their offering? What does that mean? We can get into the why and why not, but just high level, what is it?
Well, yeah, there are many parameters that define it, but I'll speak from my perspective as we do in BPM Partners. It's a branded offering with a set of deliverables delivered for a fixed price. So much like a software product, it's a product with these features, and here's the cost for it. I mean, in between, they're different products, software versus service, although there are similarities. But it's something you could, get your hands around, understand what you're going to get for this fee. And that's a big difference, is that it's deliverables versus time and materials. And you pay one fee, There's no risk to the customer that it's going to be a runaway project or minimally some budget overruns. They could budget for it appropriately. They know exactly what it's going to cost, and that's very attractive to the customers. And by the same token, there are many benefits to us as the consulting firm, which we'll delve into. But it is, as the name implies, it's a packaged service, much like a product. There are things you need to do that. You can't just say tomorrow, okay, let's package our services. There are things that have to exist for that to work, and it doesn't work for every type of service, quite honestly. But, it is a beneficial thing for both the consulting company and for the customer and the market at large. It's a packaging up of your services. You put a bow on it, and this is what's in here, and here's what it costs.
Okay, so it's different from a fixed fee offering, though, right? Because fixed fee, you have different items that you might be picking from as you're scoping, and you have, you do an estimate around it, and you go through, and you have this fixed fee that has some risk budget built into it, and you say, here, Mr. Customer, this is your fixed fee offering. This is similar but different.
Right, it builds upon that. And when we were at Hyperion, we dabbled in fixed fee, and quite honestly, I got badly burned, and I kind of stay away from that concept. I'll give you the example because I remember it clearly. We were working for a record company in Manhattan, so we enjoyed traveling in there. We had a good time. Me and the other consultants, we offered them. We had done some consulting for them. We helped them install their Hyperion software. And they're pretty happy with that, and that was time and materials. And they came back and said, there's 4 other reports we thought we were going to do ourselves. We don't have the time. Here are the 4 reports. Can you guys do this? And I looked at it and I said, interesting. 4 reports, very clear what we're going to deliver here. Why don't we fix price it? And I was thinking, from the Hyperion perspective, we could make this more profitable for us instead of pure time and materials. So sure, I built in a buffer, but I also built in a profit. And I said, these 4 reports, I know we could do it in, let's say, 4 days. Let's make it a 10-day fixed price package, and we could do it. There's buffer, there's some profit. Yeah, big mistake. It was a disaster. I mean, we like the customer. We like going into Manhattan for the day. It's all, all good. But we never got out of there. We were there for weeks. And the guy who ran the project from the customer side, we liked him. He was a very good guy. He actually was a record company. He gave us one of their employee perks, which is the beginning of each month. You got to order a bunch of the records on that label for free. And they had a lot of big artists, a lot of good people. So we kind of enjoyed that. That was fun. And it was records. It tells you how long ago it was. It was not CDs or cassettes. It was records. But anyway, so what happened was, because it was fixed price, and we had a good relationship with the customer, they would not let us out of there. We did the reports, and we were done. We're walking away. And he said, this needs to be bolded. I said, our report writer doesn't do that. You could bold totals and subtotals, but you can't just randomly bold in other rows. It's got to be bolded. And, we were working within our report writer, which had its own constraints. So this became a huge pain in the neck for all of us. We had to go back to developers and said, can you add a free-form bolding capability to the report writer? We were there for weeks, and the guy, this nice guy, turned into a monster. Can this variance column, if the variance negative, can it show in red? Our report writer doesn't do colors. I want it. It was a nightmare. We were there for weeks, and we learned never again at Hyperion did we do fixed price. What we did end up doing, which has other similarities and is less risky for us, is a retainer to pre-purchase a bunch of services for no distinct purpose, and we would sell a maintenance retainer. So once we left, after the project's over, if you need us back to help, just commit to this dollar amount and we'll give you X% discount and use it as you wish. And that was pretty clean, and the customer liked it. And the way the retainers worked is they were good for a year, and if you didn't use them, we earned it. So we'd all, it's the last day of their year. I hope they don't use us. Make a big profit here. But anyway, that was...
And then that last day is when all the work comes in.
A lot of people did call at the end of their cycle. Fortunately, they had different last dates because it started at different times.
Yeah, everything December 31st.
So, so that was some of my experience of dealing with, elements of productization. But, it really came to fruition here at BPM Partners. And the reason was, as we started this company, there was something very different. what we're selling, so it's management consultants, and there are a lot of, management consultants out there that advise companies. We picked a very specific lane. Our management consulting is geared towards specifically vendor selection in the space of the software companies that we've been at. So Hyperion, Outlooksoft, but not them anymore, the world today, Oracle, SAP, Unit4, whole collection of companies out there, that produce this kind of software, and helping customers develop their requirements, put together their roadmap, where are we going to go, what are we going to do first, budgeting and planning, then we're going to get to dashboards and sales performance management and so on. Those are kind of the key elements that companies look at. So the roadmap, and then what are the requirements, what do we need in each of those areas, what's unique to us, and then which vendors should we be considering, and then how do we tell the difference, how do we evaluate them. And there's a whole set of very specific process steps that work for each and every company. Process is always the same. So first of all, that's one of the reasons it can be productized, but the main reason that I wanted to productize it was because to deliver the service effectively, there's a big R&D component, just like a software product. We need to meet with all the vendors on a regular basis at senior people in the company, such as myself, doing those meetings. So from a billable hours perspective, these are high-level people that are going out and spending a lot of the time meeting with the vendors to get updates on what they're up to, what's in their roadmap, and also doing research. We do a lot of studies. We meet with customers. We survey customers for key trends, what they're looking for in their products, but also how do they rate their vendors. So we do a tremendous amount of work that nobody pays us for, and we deliver the value of that work through our consulting service. And if we just did time and materials, we'd have to charge a very high rate that the market wouldn't bear to recoup that investment we've made. So it's baked into the product. That's part of the product, is that we've done this research and you're getting the value of it, and that's part of what you're paying for. It's not just the hours you see us, it's the value of that research, which to you is of the customer's tremendous value. And by the way, you're sharing the cost with all of our other customers, but it's baked into our service product. It's not just the hours we spend that you're paying for, and for very good reason. And that's huge. That was a key reason we had to do this, and it works out well for all concerned. So we're able to build that value and the cost to us into the overall service price. So again, you're not just paying for hours that consultants are doing tasks, but you're paying for the value of all the work we've done leading up to that. And then there are tools and reusable components that we have. Again, you're paying for that. We have to keep them up to date. For example, when doing requirements development, we have a huge database of what are the key requirements companies look for in these systems, and we're able to pull those out and customize it for this particular customer based on what they've told us. And we have many other components like that. So there are real, consulting tools, which many consultants have, but very specific to this market we're targeting and what they're looking for. There's lots of research we've done, face-to-face meetings, surveys, and the like. Again, spent a lot of time doing that, bundled into this service package. And all of that stuff comes along with the expert consultant who now delivers it. So basically, we're delivering. Think of it as installing this product, basically, bringing all this stuff we've done to bear on your account. But if we just billed you for the hours we spent doing that, that wouldn't be fair to us. We wouldn't get properly compensated. So that's why it works for us. Why it works for the customer, and there are other benefits to consulting companies, which we'll get to, but why it works for the customer is because they know what they're getting. It's in our statement of work, it's very specific deliverables, and their goal is to select a vendor. So it makes it very clear. There's an end game here. I brought you guys in.
The intended outcome.
Yeah. The outcome is the outcome. I mean, that's the key deliverable. Help us pick a vendor, and we will. Now, they can go ahead and buy that vendor or not at the end of it. Doesn't matter. We delivered our service. And all of them tend to do that. They actually buy the vendor they looked at, with us. I mean, they look at multiple vendors. They end up on one, and they typically purchase that one. So it works well. But the customers what they mainly like about it is the fixed price aspect, because they know how to budget for it, because they've experienced time and materials projects that have run over budget, and they do. I've been in the consulting market a long time. There are consultants that will lowball those estimates to get the business, and then when I come in, it is what it is. Whatever it actually costs, you have to pay. And there are other guys, who build in buffer, and then they don't look as good against the guys who lowballed it. I mean, it's a messy marketplace out there when you start playing with consulting estimates. But we don't deal with that. We're fixed price. This is the price. And, we learned a lot of lessons along the way, even at BPM Partners in the early days. There are variables that affect the price that in the early days we didn't account for. So we knew the process was the same, but what we missed out on, I don't know how, in retrospect, had we missed that? One of the things we do is we interview their key stakeholders for what are your requirements for a new solution. We're looking for a vendor. What are your key requirements? And the first couple of companies we worked with, they had about 5 key stakeholders. And so, this is how it goes, and we charge for that because that is a labor-intensive task, us interviewing them. So that's one of the parts that actually, we can calculate how many hours we're going to spend on that when we price these out. And then we ran into a customer who had 20 people that we needed to interview. And how stupid could we be? The SOW did not limit it to a certain number of people. So, after that, limit it to 5, or you could change the number, but that's how we price it. So we discovered, and this was the learning curve for us, we discovered there are certain moving parts that are not fixed, that vary by customer. How many different vendors are they going to look at? How many people are going to be in the interview process? And what's the scope of their project? Because some customers are just looking at budgeting and planning. Others are looking at financial consolidation. Others are looking at operational planning, workforce planning, sales planning, supply chain planning. And all of that just broadens the scope, and that translates to the part that's labor intensive, our time investment. So with those variables captured in the SOW, we're able to price it very specifically. And again, the product doesn't have a single price. The price is based on how those variables fall out for each customer. And that's the simple calculation engine. We know exactly what to do. Are they going to need an RFP? In addition to us, some companies want to do an RFP, which we generally don't recommend. Having been a vendor, we know what happens to RFPs. Yes, we do this. Yes, we do this. Thanks for sending us the RFP. But meanwhile, there are companies that want to do it, have to do it. And so when they involve us in that, we review the RFP content, we make it better so you'll get more meaningful answers, we review the responses for accuracy and reasonableness. So that also increases the price. And also in general, when a company tells you they want to do an RFP, it's a sign they're going to take a lot of your time. It's just a more bigger, more bureaucratic company that's doing that, and everything's going to take more time with them. So we know to factor that into our pricing. And that's something, again, we learned along the way in our particular lane, the business that we focus on. So we did grow and we got better at it over time, but now it's a well-oiled machine, as one of our customers said. You guys are a well-oiled machine. I kind of like that. Okay, we got it right, and you know what you're going to get, and we deliver it. The other thing that customers like is, I don't want to say something bad about the consulting business because I've been in it a long time and I love it, but one of the things they like, there's no incentive to run the meter because they have a perception, and I'll tell you honestly, I think we did this in my earlier days at some of the software companies, is when your consultants, who are an expensive resource, have no project lined up after this one, there might be a little bit of an incentive to keep going and stretch and try to get more billable hours out of it. And, I know that's happened. I've seen that happen within our company. Some of my regional consulting managers would do that to kind of make their numbers for the month. And that, how it is in consulting, you look at utilization rate and all that good stuff. And there's an incentive in there to kind of keep a project going a little longer until that next project shows up. There's no incentive for us to do that. As a matter of fact, there's an incentive to get out of there as quickly as possible. I mean, I got my money, you bought my product. Yes, I have to make you happy and referenceable. Can't run out the door. But there's no incentive to stay on longer than necessary. And the customers get that. I mean, they appreciate that. And that's, the two factors they love best are the fixed price and the fact that, we're going to get it done as quickly as possible because they understand, we've made our money. There's no reason to hang around. But on the other hand, if we run out of there, they're not going to give us a good reference. So that's the balancing part of it. The thing
and then it probably helps with their time commitment too, because they know then how much they can budget for it because you've given this estimate. It's going to be 5 interviews. Right. What to do. What to say, to ask. With that formulaic approach how to go about it. And setting expectations is a big part of it, of course, because you want to make sure that your customer is going to be happy. And I really like the way that it sounds like BPM is approaching this, which is almost like software as a service. It's consulting as a service, which is very modular. So if you need 5 interviews, that's the base with it. If you need 10 interviews, 20 interviews,
Right.
you can buy those add-ons much as you can buy, projects and HCM. You can buy those additional modules as you need it. So it sounds like that's been the BPM approach to it.
Actually, it's interesting you should mention that. Yes, you could buy add-on modules, and that's how we price those out. But we actually have further productized the service. So there's not just one vendor selection product. There's actually 3 of them. Our 3 main products are what I've been describing as our premier service, which is it consists of 2 consultants, a senior project manager, a principal consultant, so a team, and that delivers the things we just talked about. But then we have 2 other versions of that. One, we have the vendor selection value pack, and branding and marketing is part of it. That name, until we name these things, it was also harder to explain what they are. So the naming part is important. So the vendor selection value pack, you get 1 consultant, and you pick up some of the slack. So there's some work, we'll share our tools with you. So here's our requirements interview questionnaire. You interview your people using this questionnaire and give me the results. I need that to factor into the next stage of the process. So it cuts the costs in half. You get 1 consultant. And for companies that are cost conscious and have the resources, they pick up some of the slack with the tools we provide them. They become the expert, basically. And then more recently, we introduced the Vendor Selection Express. And we did this at the beginning of the pandemic because many companies needed these types of systems more than ever, but they're also very, cost conscious because of the uncertainty of their own revenue streams in their business due to the pandemic. Nobody knew it was going to happen, back in March 2020 when it kind of really started. And so we developed this Vendor Selection Express service, which is an accelerated version of our package services. We pulled out, it was really designed for mid-market companies, so we pulled out some of the steps that were not as necessary to them. We accelerated others. So we took a streamlined version of it, and we also, interestingly enough, we extended into the vendor world. We got a number of vendors to partner with us and to offer discounted pricing to customers of the Vendor Selection Express. So we worked together. So as the consultants that helped them choose the vendors, and then a group of vendors, I think 10 or 11 vendors signed up for it, that they would offer rates less than they normally do, so discounted rates uniquely to customers of this package, and it became a very compelling way to get these smaller, lower-end mid-market companies to be able to get the same benefits the larger companies were getting from our services as well as the vendors themselves. And that was a very large success. We're trying to phase it out now, but no, there's still demand for it, so we still do it. It's fine. I mean,
That's great.
It's less profitable for us, but it's a good thing to do, and it's still profitable. So of course we'll do it, but it benefits those smaller companies, and it works very well. So we have versions of the vendor selection within, and they just evolved over time as we saw the various needs, and we'll continue to look at that. So I was starting to say before, customers like most aspects. There's one aspect they don't like, and which I haven't really touched on yet, is it's fixed price. And you know what it's going to cost. We also look for that to be paid up front. Now, revenue recognition, of course, is a different animal, but I'll leave that to the accountants to figure out. But from a cash flow perspective, that's great for the consulting company. You get the cash up front. Customers are reluctant to do that. But I would say 70 to 80% actually do it. And the explanation is, you're getting this for a fixed price. You have no risk in this. We're taking some risk. It could take longer than we imagined. And in exchange for that, we look for payment up front. And for most companies, that has actually, worked quite well. For others, and I get this, I'm a customer of services myself, you want some holdback. So on certain deals, and we're happy to do it, and our, contracts people figure it out, a 10% holdback. So I'm not paying that last 10% till you're done. And that's fine, and it always works. We always get it. It's just, timing a payment kind of issue. And then the ones I don't like so much, but again, we do when we have to, is deliverables-based payments. So all of a sudden, it's not time and materials, but there are very specific deliverables within, and not every one of them, but they'll pick like 2 major ones and say we'll pay a third up front, a third after this deliverable, and a third after that deliverable, and that works for us as well. So That's the only area where customers have pushed back. And again, it's quite manageable for us. Something I haven't mentioned, a benefit of this to the consulting company is in that whole administrative side of having the consultants track and report their hours and invoice each month based on those hours, and then collections following up on, several invoices. You really minimize that whole administrative work, which nobody in that cycle likes. Even the customer getting multiple invoices they have to pay, and your collections people checking up, where's my payment? You avoid all that. The payment's up front, and for a period we actually had a rule, which we decided wasn't nice, so we undid it, was we won't have our initial meeting with you until you've paid until you paid the initial invoice, which usually was the full price. And that was too, it was our collections people. They twisted our arm. They said, you guys are already in there doing work. We haven't collected the money. I said, did anyone ever stiff us? No, they didn't. So, there's no real risk there. It's just the idea of we're delivering work and, in our model, you got this fixed price, you should pay it up front. But we've backed off of that, and we'll start the project and let collections deal with, getting paid.
Okay. So it just sounds like, to kind of summarize what we've talked about a little bit, the reasons on why to do it is it creates a predictable offering for you as a services company. So you know exactly what is going to be delivered. It's based on that modular approach, as we had talked about, which allows you to fit things together as a bundle, as a package, to have that be an offering. To your customer, they know exactly what they're getting because it's a service that they're receiving. It is that packaged offering, that product that they are receiving. So they know exactly what they're going to get. And that's huge for a company to be able to know exactly what they're going to get. They're able to then be referenceable, which is a benefit for you. And they're only referenceable if they're happy with the service provided, which is, of course, a benefit to them. So those are a lot of the reasons why to do it. So for why not to do it, you touched on one, I think, which is the requirement to pay up front, of course, with some exceptions to be made. So that can be a challenge for organizations, especially smaller firms that might not be as established yet, that really have a proven track record with it. So by asking for that fee up front, that might be a reason on why not to do it. Are there any other reasons why a firm should not look to productize that offering?
Well, first of all, we missed one of the main reasons to do it, which again wasn't the reasons we did it, but it's for anybody to do it. I mean, there's the cash flow, which I touched on. You're typically getting the money up front. The margins. I mean, when you've productized it and you have reusable tools and you're getting paid, for the research investment you made, but each one is paying you, because to each one of them, it's valuable to them. But in fact, you're selling that multiple times. Again, much like a software product, you develop it once, you sell it many times. The margins, I remember being at a software company where I was running the services group, how the investors didn't like the services group because it had low margins. And that was insulting to me. I mean, we're here to build referenceable customers. We're still profitable. Don't bug me about the margins. But in this model, I mean, our net margins run close to 40% a year, which I believe is relatively high. I know it is, and we're quite happy with that. I mean, it works well. Again, that's a benefit of this because, it's not hourly. I mean, and there's so many other benefits. They're not watching the hours. I mean, besides the administrative reporting it, I remember projects where customers, because it was hourly, they wanted to see they were getting their money's worth. They required us to come on site and sit in their conference room, even for parts of the project that we had no interaction with them. I want you in this office, sit in the conference room. If you have any questions, we'll be out here. We had no questions. We couldn't stay in our home office, or today, couldn't stay in my true home office. So that's another benefit of it, is they're not micromanaging and watching how their hours are spent, because again, as long as they get the end product, what does that matter? It's deliverables based. So, there are tons of good reasons to do it. The reasons not to do it are, as I've mentioned, if you don't do it properly, you could get burned. You could get stuck, as we did a couple of times, or I did in my Hyperion days, where you're just stuck there and you can't get out of there because it's fixed price, and you gave them a list of deliverables and your interpretation of it and theirs was different. And then there are other types of consulting where it just doesn't fit. It's not, the elements that you need to do this, it has to be productizable. It needs to have, a repeatable process. So it needs to be something you do over and over again so you know how to price it out, where its deliverables can be explicitly spelled out fairly easily and understood, where you have some other value add besides just packaging up a bunch of hours, because that's a retainer. I've seen some software implementation firms attempt this, and it's interesting, and they'll have, if you buy the product, they'll have an implementation package, a basic, a standard, an essentials, an elite, and what's in there is we'll code 4 reports, we'll set up the chart of accounts and the organizational hierarchy, and again, I look at that, there's a risk element to that you don't know what you're getting in for, because those vary, as we found out many years ago. Don't repeat our errors. You can get stuck because you fix the price. And I know there's a buffer in there, but you could get burned. And also, I haven't seen tremendous excitement from the customers in that, because again, in our vendor selection process, as you come out the other end selecting a vendor, you're also selecting an implementation firm, and we see what those proposals look like and how the customers react. And there's one vendor who has a bunch of partners that particularly package up implementation, and the customers are less excited with that than they are with the vendor, implementation partners who spell out a long list of tasks and that whole timeline and, the traditional implementation model, and they just feel more assured we're going to get what we need from this. And as we go, we could adjust it. If we pick up the knowledge faster, we can save some money. We can take on more of those tasks. They feel it's very manageable, and they like the open-ended aspect of it. So, a standard software implementation, it's harder to do that as a package. I mean, you could try it, but it's just harder. And, it doesn't have those value add elements like all of the research we do, as an example. The process is repeatable. It's the same steps, design. These are the elements we design, build models, build connections to source systems. The list is the same, but there are so many variables. What is the source system? Do we have a pre-built connector for that? Do we need to create a custom one? There's so many variables, it's very hard to productize that. So there are a lot of implementation consulting companies out there, but I just think that's still a challenge.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if we've done the analysis and we've gone through, we've looked at it as an organization, as a consulting firm, we find that we have this repeatable process. We have the value add that we feel is there to be able to then productize our offering. How do you go about that? What do you look at? What do you look to do when you take a retainer or fixed fee or time and materials offering that you've traditionally done and package that into a product? How do you do that?
So you need to take a look at what the statement of work would look like. What are the deliverables? What are the key elements that, again, you could always customize, but what are the key elements that are in this service that we deliver, whatever that service may be? So how would the statement of work look like? What do you do in there? What are the tasks you do? So, for example, in ours, there's an education session up front. It's 2 hours, very specific. It's written in there, education session, 2 hours. Requirements interviews, 2 hours per person or group or whatever it might be, 5 people. Very specific elements. Can you write up your service that way? So that's the first test. Can you write up an SOW that would spell out these very key deliverables? And again, I talked about hours so they know what to expect, but it's not hours. But they're not paying you for the hours. For example, we deliver a requirements report. So that's in there. It's a deliverable. We deliver a vendor recommendations report. That's in there as deliverable. It doesn't talk about the hours of research that went into that so we can create that report, or even the hours to create the report. So it's not really hourly based, other than a couple of labor-intensive tasks like the training, the requirements gathering, and so on. But again, they're not paying for those hours separately. And then what does that all look like? And then how do you think you could fairly price it? And is that a repeatable process? Is that something you do over and over again with some customization? And then step up from that, label it. Maybe you have different versions for different markets, by industry, by company size, what it might be. And then test it out. Try it on the next project. And, you can get burned and you stay away from the flame, or you tweak it and you go for it, and the win is pretty big. We've been doing this for 20 years, and it's worked like a charm for us.
That's great. Okay, so you take what you've learned from everything. So you have a shot at it. If it works, if you don't get burned too bad, and you're not scared to try again, then you continuously refine it, and then have that feed then the offering. So it's never a process, much like software, much like ERP. It's not done. It continues to evolve. It continues to change with the market requirements, with what your customers are asking for.
Absolutely. I mean, we introduced a fourth package several years ago. So it's not just the one. I mean, you can create different slices based on different market segments. We introduced a fourth package years ago, and it never really took. So we canceled it. It's gone. I mean, so it didn't cost us anything, but very few people took us up on it. So the demand wasn't there for it. So again, it's easy enough to stop. We don't do that. It had elements of these other packages, so we didn't do any extra work to create it, but it was just a repackaging and branding for a certain market segment that was underserved. And they're underserved for a reason. They don't want this stuff. Well, I'll tell you what it was, because it's interesting, at least to me. In the vendor selection business, the biggest competitor we have, and you do need to look at the market and where you're competing, and that is part of putting this together. It's a differentiator if your competitors aren't yet doing it, and it's a positive differentiator. In our business, what we lose to is generally not another competitor. What we lose to is they're going to do it themselves. I'm smart. I bought software before. I'll buy this. But don't get me started. But there's reasons that's not. It's a big investment you're going to make. It's a front office system. You're going to live with it for years. You do want to make it sure you get it right. It's going to have high visibility, and it's very different, and it's evolving incredibly rapidly. So, but what can you do? If people don't want it, they don't want it. So what we did is created a Go It Alone service pack. So we're not going to do vendor selection. We're going to sell you a bunch of our tools and research, so at least you're better equipped to do this yourself. And no, we got this. We don't even need that. All right. Now, of course, I'm happy to say some of those people came back years later. Yeah, the last system we bought didn't quite work out. Can you guys help us? And yes, we could. We have a wonderful package for you to choose from. Go It Alone pack is gone, but any of these others are still here.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, Craig, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you talking to us about the productization of professional services, why to do it, why not to do it, the benefits that you can get, the pitfalls to avoid, because it sounds like you and BPM Partners have already kind of paved that way, and you've seen some of those issues and shared them with us today. And then talked a little bit about the implementation of it. So once you've decided to do it, how can you do it? And the big thing that I'm taking away from this is the journey is never finished. Much like a software product, you continue to refine it, to evolve it, to make sure that it's always meeting the needs of your customers.
Absolutely right. And it's a good journey. I've enjoyed it, and I'm going to keep doing this. I'm not stopping. I don't care how old I get. I will be doing this. I'm sticking with it. It works, and I'm having fun.
That's great. That's great. Well, Craig, thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Thanks for sharing your experience, your knowledge, and everything that you're doing with BPM Partners. It sounds fantastic. So thank you for being here.
Thanks again for having me.
Yeah, and thanks everybody for listening, for watching. This has been another Inspiration4U podcast, and I'm Bryce Wolf with Unit 4. Thanks.